All right, here we go. Recording the class. Talking about Keats. What's due on Thursday? Oh, your critical evaluation's due on
I was hoping
Thursday.
it was like next Tuesday.
I knew it was this week. I was just hoping it was.
No, it's definitely this week.
I have a business calculus test that day at 9.
Oh, you should do better planning.
No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm fairly ready for it. But
Is there any way we can try to postpone it?
You could ask the teacher to move the test.
That's not this.
No, yeah, move the test.
No.
Yeah, ask the student. Just say, hey, could you move this whole test? Probably be a lot easier to move the test than to move a due date for a essay. I'll actually be grading y'all's first like usual, even though I really don't want to, because the critical evaluations are a little harder to grade, but the other class I'll be grading census analysis too, so that's going to be very tempting because they're so easy.
in 1302 or 1301, are they longer?
What?
The critical evaluations, were they more than 600 to 800 words?
No, it's the same range.
You just seen
Did you want me to change y'all's range to
I was
601?
about to say, no, I like it.
It has to be 601 words.
601 words, one extra word.
Like, you get to 600, like, that's, I can't change it. No, it's perfect.
All right, so that paper is going to be due on Thursday. Thursday, I'm also going to be handing out, so it'd be a good day to be here, because otherwise you're going to have to go to my box. I'll be handing out the midterm exam review, which is just a sheet that you can write as much on it as you can, and then and bring it to class. You can use it on the exam. So whatever you think is worth writing down to have with you. I don't do that actually, but I need to stop that. It's going to go off the whole class if I don't do it. So the one thing that I make it actually harder on you, it sounds like it'd be easier, but it's actually harder, is I don't just give you that midterm review. I also let you bring your Norton textbook and use it on the exam. Although oddly, what that generally, the effect that has is not one of, oh, okay, well now I have so much help with me that I should be able to do great. What it generally does is causes people to get overconfident in their ability to use the textbook to find the answers, and then they don't use the review to the extent that they should, which then makes their performance on the exam go down. So it's more like a temptation I'm providing you to see if you're responsible enough to actually work hard on the midterm review, which is really the one way you'll, I think, do well. Questions about grading or anything like that? Essays?
When is the midterm?
Midterm is going to be on Tuesday. Yeah, and over in Sulphur Springs, what's going to happen is on Thursday, after class, you'll go to the, I don't know, it's not a front office, you know what I mean? It's like a desk where like Iris and Linda are. You'll go up there and you'll grab the midterm review after class from them. And then if you forget it, I think they'll just still have it up there. Or if you can't make it on Thursday, they'll still have it up there if you want to grab it on Friday or Monday. Because I generally don't like to email those because of security reasons, I guess, is what you'd say. And then on the midterm on Tuesday in Sulphur Springs, they're just going to bring the midterm to y'all in the classroom. And you'll have it kind of from the beginning, and you'll just do the midterm. And I'll just have, on the day of the midterm, I'll have Axon and Latide sit at separate tables. That's the only change I'll make to what y'all are doing. It's just on midterm exam day, which is on Tuesday of this next week. Yes. Oh, question, yes? Uh-huh.
And I got some issues that I needed to email you about to talk to you, so I'm going to get with you on that night today.
Okay, are you talking about that's on the day of the midterm on Tuesday?
Oh, what was that? I'm sorry.
Is that?
Today.
Oh, today you have an appointment.
Yes.
Oh, okay, well luckily that won't affect the midterm, so you'll still be making a midterm, and I mean all you'll miss today is a little bit of instruction. But thanks for letting me know. That way I know like when you get up, like what it's for. So yeah, that's fine today, but just try to be here on Thursday for the midterm exam review, and then next Tuesday will be the midterm exam. But as long as y'all can make it those days, that'd be great. Other days are going to be a little hard. Oh, and I think next Thursday is going to be a great day too for everybody to try to be here, because I'll be assigning the research paper and going over the details there, and that's going to be kind of it's the big assignment of the semester, so it's good to know as much as you can about that.
How are the questions going to be posed?
On the midterm exam, I mean, there'll be multiple choice, and then I really think that I give you sort of almost even the question on the midterm exam review. It's very close to the question itself. I don't know if it actually is, but it's close. Yeah. Yes.
Can I rewrite it again, or have you already graded it?
Reposted census analysis one? Oh, I haven't graded it yet.
Okay.
Probably not going to be until either right before spring break or after spring break that I'll get to things like that. Because I'm going to make sure that I get all the originals, first round papers graded first. Other questions, concerns before we move on to Keats?
Did you, okay, I'm gonna confess, I was texting, but
Mm-hmm.
did you already say what time, like what the midterm is over? Like,
Oh, it's just everything we've done so far.
Oh, okay. What, which is the poetry? Just
Yeah.
Basically like the quiz questions, but maybe a little different.
Yeah, like I think some of the questions are directly from the quiz. Some are brand new.
Okay.
Some are, it's kind of a mix.
Awesome.
Yeah.
How many questions is there?
25 questions.
Not bad.
Not too bad. It is a Scantron. You have to bring a Scantron that day, so be prepared.
I have like
With a Scantron.
20, but not quite.
Well, one plus four.
It'd actually be really smart if somebody were to get on eBay and buy one of those bulk sets of Scantrons. Is every time you go to a class, just sell them to somebody.
They do that at Commerce.
They do that at Commerce.
I felt like I did that last semester.
Come
Come into
into
class.
They're like, how much are those things in the store?
35
Yeah.
cents.
Yeah, you just offer it for a quarter. You're like, you don't even have to pull out a nickel.
Yeah.
You just got your 1 quarter. I'll sell it to you right here. You don't have to travel. It's a good deal. It's a good deal.
People would definitely do that.
Yeah, they would. They'd be like, I got the quarter right now. I'll give it to you.
Somebody might even say, "Oh, here, I'll give you."
I give you
for
50
$1."
cents.
Or, yeah.
I give you $1.
I'll give you $1 if you give 3 other people theirs. That nice person. All right, let's talk about some Keats. I'll probably just generally go through Keats in kind of a chronological order. Although I may, if we end up having not like some time left today, I may actually skip to the poem To Autumn at the very end. Because I don't like that poem very much, so I figured just get it out of the way. The reason I don't like To Autumn is, I don't know, it just feels a lot different than the other Keats. I feel like it's almost just more of a straight description than it is having the kind of philosophical and idealistic stuff going on that's in the rest of Keats. But Keats died at 26. He kind of knew he was going to die. You can feel it in his writing. It's a little different than like Shelley, who did die young, yes, and so did Byron. I think Byron maybe died at 36 and Shelley died at 34 or 30. But Keats, he just knew. Like, he knew it was coming. Like, unlike Shelley, who just, died on a boat, couldn't really prepare for that. Keats sort of felt it because, he had a family history and he was sickly already. So we talk about, I'm first looking into Chapman's Homer. It's so interesting to me that it's incredibly important with all of these romantics poets to look directly at the note that they have for every single poem, because they're almost indecipherable without seeing exactly under what circumstances they were writing these poems. So it says down below, is the gold hunter Balboa not Cortez, the Spanish conqueror of Mexico, who caught the first sight of the Pacific from the heights of Darien in Panama? But none of Keats' contemporaries noticed the supposed error, and modern scholarship has strongly argued that Keats knew exactly what he was doing. They say like it would have been sort of weird. I mean, it kind of would have, like, Cortez is a very musical word. Balboa, not so much. So that he just used the name Cortez. He was like, eh. Also, I think the name Cortez basically means the same for the word cut, like cutting or something like that. I think it has the same root word. Cortar, is that Spanish for cut, to cut?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think Cortez then has probably the same root word.
Cortez,
Or is it a different meaning?
it's just more of like a person's last name, probably from Spain,
Okay.
something like that. But from the first half, yeah, it's wartime. Cortez has the same. I guess they kind of changed it up for a specific last name.
So it might be almost like having, say, like the name. Granted, it wouldn't really be like this in English, but I don't know, like let's like what like we have like or Johnson, like almost like Cutson. You know, like having cut at the beginning and then just some little thing at the end.
Yeah, and then if they added that, they're like, you know what? Let's make this into a name. Oof.
Yeah. Let's add a sound, make it into a name. Whereas I can never figure out what any of our freaking what Caucasian English names mean. Like, why are they so indecipherable? So other languages is, hey, let's use a noun. Like, it's so much simpler. I just don't understand why in English it's like what there was a quote from Pulp Fiction, where somebody asked, like a cab driver asked Bruce Willis, he says, so what's your name? He says, Butch. And she says, oh, what does that mean? And he says, I'm an American, honey. Our names don't mean, he says, the word for crap. And it's just kind of like, I was like, that is so true. Like, the names aren't really necessarily chosen for meaning. Like, my wife was like, Carly Rae, let's go with Carly Rae. And I was like, oh, really, because of the meaning? She's like, I don't know what it means. I had to go look it up, and Carly actually comes from Charles, or Carl, and essentially means person or human, citizen. Yeah, I thought it was kind of interesting. So basically, she gave her the name Person. Ray is just all of our middle names. It's like my wife's middle name is Renee, but her mom's middle name is Ray. My dad's middle name is Ray. My middle name is Ray. So just let it ride.
What does Ray mean?
Like a ray.
Sun Ray? I don't know. Like, I have no idea if that's. It could mean king. I don't know. It could be anything. I've never bothered looking it up. But Cortez is the name that he chose here, and I think probably for its musical qualities and because of the, I think, more well-known nature of Cortez over Balboa is my guess. But, who was it who said he was too dramatic? Was it Jess? No. Who said it was too melodramatic, the writing? Elijah, yeah. Which I totally get, but part of me thinks like he's just desperate to cling on to as much of life as he can, so he's being dramatic with what he has. So here we go. First poem we're looking at on First Looking into Chapman's Homer. And so this is his response the first time he's reading a particular translation of Homer's The Odyssey and the Iliad, actually in reverse order, the Iliad and the Odyssey. So he's read it before. I don't know if he's read it in the original Greek or if he's read a translation. But here he's reading, because I know he was really well learned, but I do know that Shelley was much better at Greek than Keats was, if Keats had any Greek scholarship. Because he had that tutor, but I don't know if he actually learned Greek. I don't know. Anyways, so he's reading a translation, a new translation of Homer's The Iliad and the Odyssey, and this is what he writes about that experience of reading it. Much have I traveled in the realms of gold, and many goodly states and kingdoms seen. Round many western islands have I been, which bards in fealty. It's kind of like he's saying, around many western islands I have been, which bards in fealty to Apollo hold. And I think he's talking about his past experience. He's like, yeah, I've been there quite a bit. I've been to the realms of gold. I've read the Iliad. I've read the Odyssey. I'm very familiar with it. Oft of one wide expanse had I been told that deep-browed Homer ruled as his domain. Yet did I never breathe its pure serene till I heard Chapman speak out loud and bold. So he's like, I'd heard, that Homer had ruled his domain. I think he's talking about specifically the language that he used to speak about, what he spoke about. It's kind of like there's certain things that you'll read in, it's hard to explain, but certain things you'll read in translation, you're like, you can tell that it's better in its original, you just don't know exactly what's wrong with what you're reading. And I've actually read some versions of, like there's an old version of Beowulf that you'd read and wasn't very good. And then Seamus Heaney's Beowulf, the one that's in the book here, and it was like, oh, it's way better. And then my favorite probably example is if you look at an online translation that's free for Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, it's like you can get kind of what it means, but the one that's in our book by I think a guy named Tracy or something, you read it and you're like, oh wow, this is actually good. The other one, like, I understand what the basic story is, but this one like is both basic story and enjoyable. And so he must be like for the first time not just reading, oh look, I'm getting the plot of the Odyssey and the Iliad. He's realizing, oh, this is actually something that's enjoyable to read. And now I feel like Homer really is the master that people have always said that he was. Then felt I like some watcher of the skies when a new planet swims into his ken. So that's a pretty bold like assertion. He's like reading this new translation of Homer is like being an astronomer and, oh look, Jupiter. You know, like, bro, is a new planet I've discovered just now, like looking in the sky. And this says into his ken, so I don't really know if he's talking about necessarily, because they probably didn't have really great telescopes at this point, I'm going to guess. Maybe some, but not like great. So I don't know if he's talking about into his ken. Maybe he's talking about noticing just in the sky amongst the stars. But I like to think of it as seeing it in a telescope, because that's more dramatic. That seems like something that Keats would go for. Or like stout Cortez when with eagle eyes he stared at the Pacific, and all his men looked at each other with a wild surmise, silent upon a beak in Darien. And I like that vision that it's, you know, they didn't know whether or not you could reach the Pacific Ocean by crossing the Americas. They didn't really know. But at this moment, when Cortez and his men, which apparently didn't really happen, but that's irrelevant, Cortez and his men get across and they get to a peak and they look down and they see, oh, there's the ocean. So there's another ocean on the other side of this one. What they all must have thought, just all standing there at the top of the mountain, just looking out and being like, we did it. Like the world is now open up to us. Like there's new possibilities. By the way, spoilers for any flat earthers, that's not real. It's a circle. This is just how that's how. Well, yeah, I know that's how life works. I read something really funny recently. It was like somebody on Twitter who like said that the Earth was flat. They said we have flat Earth Society members all around the globe, and the person replied and said, "Think about what you just said." But
Wouldn't it be like
in this moment, essentially, they kind of proved to themselves, or they kind of felt like they proved to themselves, that the world's not flat. And imagine finding out that reality. The turning of a two-dimensional world into a three-dimensional world. He equates that to what it was like reading Homer in a more musical, kind of entertaining, pleasurable fashion than just its essential bits. Which I can imagine, you know, being somebody who's really into that kind of stuff, that would be the case. I can see it. I like this poem a lot. In fact, I love all of Keats. You find him over-dramatic, but me, I just find like it's the, what do you call it, the idealism, like the idealizing of everything that the mind does or everything in life. Is it starting to rain? It sounded like rain.
No, I think it was the car in the hallway.
A car driving down the hallway? Cart.
Cleaning cart.
Makes so much more sense. I don't know. I love how it's like he takes the world and perfects it in his mind, I guess. And everything is so charged with emotion.
I like the ones that aren't so much about how to feel with people's mind.
Like, I don't like To Autumn. It's just a description of autumn to me.
Some of them were just real hard for me to understand. I didn't get what he was saying in some of them.
no, I didn't understand at all.
Nightingale's hard to get through. Grecian Urn can be hard to get through, but I think once you get the metaphor, it becomes easier. In fact, Ode on a Grecian Urn is probably my favorite. La Belle Dame sans Merci is a little harder because it's not a lyric poem like his other ones. It's more or less a story, kind of like a fantasy story.
What language is that? That's Spanish and French?
La Belle Dame sans Merci. It should just be French.
Because La Bella, where is it at? Say it again?
La belle dame sans merci.
See, when I was reading that, I read it the first part.
You're in
Spanish.
belle. But it's like, because it doesn't have an A at the end, though. It has an E.
Bella, but an E in Spanish makes an S sound.
Right, but the word in Spanish for that is
Beautiful.
bella, not belle.
Bella.
I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess it's because I already knew that the word was Bella, not Bella, but Bella in Spanish. I was like, oh, this must also be French. But it's like,
But it was like.
I wonder what the Beauty and the Beast is in French. What is beast in Spanish? Bestia. So it's probably like la belle.
Bella.
La Bella y la Bestia.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's the Spanish. I'm trying to figure out what the French would be.
Oh.
La belle.
But is it?
I don't know what and is in French. Does anyone know what and is in French?
A-E-T.
A. So it'd be
I was
la.
confused,
I don't know.
'cause
The
thought
one
it
thing
was
that bothers me about this is there a law in French? Wouldn't it be le?
It would be law.
Oh, it would be law. So there's two forms? Oh, okay. Well, then that works. I didn't realize that there was a law in. I always thought that was only in Spanish. So that was the only thing that's ever confused me. Well, it works. It's French. So I guess it'd be something close to that, like la belle et la bestie or besta, probably something like that. I don't. Yeah. What is? I bet if I like a beast in French, it's something very similar to
It's the
bet.
B-E-T-E.
B-E-T-E. Oh, okay. How did you just know that?
Yeah,
weird
the AU.
thing. I don't know what it's called, but
The
Or the circumflex.
the rooftop.
Yeah, rooftop.
I don't know. Like, I don't know what the real word is. Rooftop. Isn't that a song? Isn't that a song?
Probably.
Dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun. I think it's a song.
It probably is.
I love the French food that I've had. I very much enjoyed the quiche. I think that's about it. I haven't had a lot of. I haven't had a lot of French food, but I have to admit Mexican food's better. I don't know how I know this. It just has to be true because the food is all so incredible. What?
I said I eat French fries.
That's not that. Oh, I didn't even think of that as French. Like I didn't even like equate that. I was like, how does that relate? All right, so yeah. Unfortunately, the Chapman's homework, I really like the way. I guess as an English teacher, it's very attractive as well because the idea of reading a book and having the results of that book feel like you're seeing a new planet as an astronomer, or that you're discovering a completely new horizon that had never been open to you before by like being a group of people on a peak. I mean, you've seen like maybe in a movie before in a painting, like somebody just looking at a vista, like just in awe. It's a cool idea. Like I imagine like something like in The Martian where he just walks to the top of like one of those mountains and he's like looking at, man, I'm on another planet right now. This is incredible. And just seeing like what that looks like. Just that new discovery. We have very little sense of new discoveries these days in terms of the physical. It just rarely happens. Because since Google started throwing satellites into space, I mean, like, what else is there? I mean, you know, they've got basically everything. I mean, all like Street View. I mean, maybe they haven't Street Viewed everything.
Maybe the ocean.
That's about it. What?
Maybe the ocean.
Maybe the ocean. The ocean's so big, though. You know what's always crazy to me? Like, I heard I read something one time that said that if the Earth is a basketball, then all of our lives takes place in a piece of paper wrapped around the basketball. That's how thick the Earth's atmosphere and ocean levels are on its surface. So, like, all of our lives take place in a paper-thin space.
There could be more people living under us and we, like, really far deep and we don't even know it.
There could be, like, lava-resistant
We know more about outer
life
space than we do
forms.
about-
Huh?
We know more about outer space than we do about like the ocean floor and like in the depths of the ocean.
It's always it's about gravity because like you can look out through nothing and see a lot, but gravity pulls things closer and closer, and the closer they get, the harder they are to penetrate, and then you can't really learn anything about it. It's crazy.
It's kind of scary.
Have they not sent an exposition to the core yet? Like an expedition, so you can like figure out some stuff about the core.
I think that probably.
Yet hilariously, in Interstellar, they throw this guy like in a black hole, and he can figure out what's the center of a black hole, but we can't even get to the center of our Earth. It's insane.
Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah,
What now?
That's a worm.
Yeah.
Because he like went back in time and made the whole thing happen really.
But if you think about what a black hole is, it's
Yeah.
something that's so dense that it's collapsed upon itself, or it sucks. It's got so dense it like the light can't escape it because there's such, yeah. But at the center of that should be tons and tons of gravitational pull that would just destroy you. That's what should be at the center.
Yeah.
It's just like a sun that you can't see that is way denser. Like that's all it really should be.
It would just crush anything to be tiny. Like it would compact everything to be extremely small because there's so much.
Yeah, so that's what I would think. Like, and just getting rid of everything else
Large garbage compactor.
atomizes you.
Using its
Well,
own
some people theorize that I believe that it breaks it down even it breaks electrons and protons into their components, which I was like, good heavens, that's insane. I guess that would be like our equivalent these days. If we saw what was in the center of a black hole, or was somebody able to like get there, like that would be kind of our equivalent here. So we're like, yeah, okay, so Cortez followed Google Maps and then got to the edge of the ocean, big whoop. We have a very little understanding, I guess, of like what it's like to not know what the world is. I mean, imagine, it literally went in that moment from 2D to 3D. Like, all the Christian philosophers were wrong. This is now correct. Now, granted, Christians eventually went, what? They thought it was flat? It was supposed to be round. And then you just reincorporate it. But originally they were like, no, it's flat. It's only what we can see. But the horizon's curved. There are many dismissive and angry Christians over time, and there are very smart Christians over time. It's a nice mix, just like with all the other people. There are smarts and there are dumbs. That's my technical terms. I guess it's really the learned and the ignorant. People willing to learn and people who are unwilling to. They're really smart and dumb. Let's see. So I like this very much because that's exactly, in a sense, how I approach the world. Like I read a book recently, in the last year or so, called The Forever War. You ever heard of it? It's a sci-fi book about like a guy who they're drafted into a war because somehow into our solar system, or like in one of our travels outside the solar system, we came in contact with an alien race, and they destroyed like one of our ships, or we destroyed one of theirs or something, because it seemed like one of us got hostile. And as a result, we went to kind of like war with them. But the problem is they were so far away that to travel to them causes the ship to travel at such a speed where time goes slower because the ship is traveling fast, like really, really fast, approaching the speed of light. And there's all these dangers with that. And he talks about the practical dangers of it. And also at times he comes back to Earth. It's like once they do a battle, they come back to Earth, but it's like 100 years later, like by the time they get back to Earth. And then there's one point at which it's like a few hundred years later, and like 1,000 years later, and it's a point when he's with all these soldiers, and like it's now the only thing to be considered sexual, like sexually, is to be homosexual, and it's considered a mental illness if you're heterosexual. So like he's leading this unit, and they're like, yeah, we're just kind of told that you are this way, and that's just how it used to be. So not to judge you for it. And he's like, okay. But it's so weird. Like in this movie, there's the element of going to war with an alien species and not really knowing what to expect. On top of, there's the idea that you become further and further removed, like to take you out of your culture and like go to, it was kind of like written around the time of Vietnam. So like you go to war and you come back and it's like everything's different and everything's the same. And it was sort of that idea that, you know, the culture of the world's completely changed around you since you've been gone. And like, now you're like a man with no home living. And as that book like just completely like changed my mind, like blew my mind when I read it. I was like, man, there's so much going on here. And it's like these little things that seem like throwaway chapters. It's like, yeah, the whole world changed while you're gone, and like all of philosophy is different now, and people are clones now of all the same person instead of actual individuals, and we're more or less like zoo animals, the people who want to still mate, which is absurd. Who wants to mate? We just grow all the people now. They're a perfect genetic copy of humanity. So we just have multiple versions of it. So you're like going, what? That would be dumb. But you're like, yeah, they give them like little planets to live on. They're like, well, we appreciate what you did for our species. So, you know, we'll give you this little planet to live on. You can be happy the rest of your life. It's so weird. Like, it's just the whole thing is strange. But I had never thought about science fiction that way before. It was really interesting. Same way I kind of felt about Dune when I read it, where it was like a book completely about a desert planet, which I hate. And all of the stuff over, like all the stuff they're arguing over is like water. Water's like the form of like currency and everything else. It's like the only thing that matters on that planet because it's so desert. And I was enthralled. And the thing's written in omniscient third person. And so I'm getting the thoughts and feelings of multiple characters in the same scene. It's pissing me off. But I loved it. Like, I loved the whole book. I don't know. It was like the political intrigue was so good that like I just couldn't put it down. And it opened my mind to like things that were possible. Additionally, there was a poem or a short story that I read. It's in the Bedford Introduction to Literature, which I don't assign anymore because it made people uncomfortable. But I read it when I was a sophomore freshman in college when I took 1302. But it wasn't called that then. It was called like 102 or 10 something. But I took 1302, and the story was called Lust, I think. And it was just a girl chronicling essentially every single time she'd had a sexual experience from high school all the way to like college. It was just like a brief little snippet about each one. And she was essentially like, it sounds like at first like she's talking about it because she wants to, but then you realize after time it's just she feels like more of a victim of all the circumstances she's been involved in. And it didn't feel like a story. It just felt like little journal entries, but there were no times. And it just almost felt like I was seeing a girl's thoughts shot at me on the page. And it was like nothing I'd ever read. It didn't really have a plot. It didn't really have... I was just like, I didn't realize literature could be this way. And all of those experiences I had with literature over time, they've all felt like this. Like, wow, this is amazing. Like, do y'all have anything that you feel like that, where like you're so excited about it, like every time you have a new discovery, it just blows your mind? Like any subject, anything you read about? For you, it's got to be philosophy. Huh? Books in general? You seem to really like get your socks blown off by like philosophers and like cool ideas and ways of thinking.
I always, like, I get into it, but then I always end up like turning away from it because I'm like, I won't get any real answers from this, and then it's just this endless cycle of going back.
Oh, you should never go away from it, because the study of philosophy is merely the study of finding more questions. That's all it really is. More questions about life than you ever actually find answers. But yeah, it is. Yeah, it should never depress you. It should just be like, more questions. Bring on the questions. You always end up feeling like the more you learn of philosophy, the less you feel you know. Yeah. And that's how it's designed. The less you can know for sure. Do y'all have anything like that for you guys? The more you take it in, the more impressed you are. And the more you feel like, oh, my horizons have been completely changed. First time you went to a church camp, maybe?
Yeah.
Kind of felt like you're like, I didn't realize the world existed in this way. That's usually like first time church camp people get baptized. You're like, I guess I have to now because I liked this a lot. I didn't. I waited until I got back to church because my mom and dad wouldn't see. Yeah. Y'all too? Yeah. They wouldn't let me get baptized in a pool at a church camp. It's not the same. So that's that one. Let's talk about the next one. On sitting down to read King Lear once again. Once again, a poem that's really great for an English major. I feel bad for y'all. You're not English majors. Anybody English majors? And actually even asked. Raise your hands higher so I can see them. No? All right. So I guess you're all trying to make money, not just be happy. That's okay. I guess making money over being happy is a good trade if you're a psycho. Okay, so let's see. I'm sitting down to read King Lear once again. So it says, and it's important to look down here at the bottom because I think the stuff about a romance can get a bit confusing if you don't read it. But Keats pauses while revising Endymion. It could be Endymion. I really don't know how exactly he pronounces it. Poetic romance to read again Shakespeare's great tragedy, King Lear. The word siren indicates Keats' feeling that romance was enticing him from the poet's prime duty to deal with the agonies, the strife of human hearts. So, he's read King Lear before, and it says once again that implies he's read it a number of times. And he's writing a romance called Endymion. Generally speaking, a romance, like he's a romantic. So it's like idealizing, that's what the word was for like the people who are essentially idealizing the human experience. Not really directly in response to the advances of science, but since the world is becoming increasingly more empirical. Like it's what we can see on the outside, what we can measure, that is becoming that by which the world is seen. There was, I think, a sort of a desperation or a recognition that human experience and the way we see the world is still incredibly relevant. And so that's kind of what Keats and Shelley and all of them were doing, was sort of responding to that idea in the sciences that this is the only way of viewing the world. It's like, no, it's not. Our personal experiences and our way of seeing the world is still incredibly valuable and matters. And so romance, though, is generally speaking, there's usually romance and tragedy. I want to look this up just to be sure, but a tragedy was usually where it had a sad ending. There's a whole lot of definitions for like Greek tragedy, but usually a tragedy is where it's essentially got a sad ending, where like the main character endures something negative, often in an ironic way. But a romance generally had kind of a happy ending, and oh no, I'm thinking of comedy. I need to look this up again because I'm getting a little confused after having done Greek tragedy. Oh no, I want the big R romance. Big R. No, thank you. I don't want this relief. Being any languages developed. No, that's not what I meant. I want this. Noun. Okay, here we go. A medieval tale based on legend, chivalric love and adventure, or the supernatural. And a prose narrative treating imaginary characters involved in events remote in time or place, and usually heroic, adventurous, or mysterious. Or a love story, especially in the form of a novel. Not so much that one. I didn't realize it had like all that. It's been a long time since I've actually taught a romance, so I had forgotten all those other. So I guess that Sir Gawain would then be a romance. Yeah. So if it's legend, chivalric love, adventure, heroism, mystery, something like that involved knights falling in love with people, and so he's writing Endymion, which is one of those, and he takes a break from it. Because I think that the adventure, it's not going to end up having as much of a depressing, ending, maybe, by the very nature of being a romance. And King Lear, I don't know if anybody's read King Lear. Have you ever read King Lear? It's really good. But it's definitely a tragedy. And he might want that sort of sobering nature of King Lear to shape his mind, even as he's writing about something a little happier and more adventurous. So he talks to his poem, and then he talks about King Lear. O golden-tongued romance, with serene lute, fair plumaged siren, queen of faraway, leave melodizing on this wintry day. Shut up thine olden pages and be mute. So he's saying goodbye to the romance he's writing. So he's trying to push it out of his mind. I want to think about you right now. Go away. Adieu. For once again the fierce dispute betwixt damnation and impassioned clay must I burn through. Once more humbly essay the bittersweet of this Shakespearean fruit. So he's like, it's time again for me to go to King Lear. Chief poet, and ye clouds of Albion. Usually another word for England, I think, right? Yeah. Actually, Albion is the word used for England in the play. Begetters of our deep eternal theme, when through the old oak forest I am gone, let me not wander in a barren dream, but when I am consumed in the fire, give me new phoenix wings to fly at my desire. Again, the melodrama of Keats comes out. So when through the old oak forest I am gone, because there's that level of mystery there in King Lear, and it does have that old English feel. Says, let me not wander in a barren dream. So don't let me get nothing out of this. Says, let me be consumed by the fire of King Lear, and after I'm all burned up, let me rise like a phoenix from the ashes. So that's pretty cool. I like that. So he wants to be, it's sort of like the Chapman's Homer, except instead of finding new horizons, he wants to be completely broken and burned as a result of this. Like, you ever had an experience with that with a book of any kind, or even a movie, where the experience of it has completely feels like it breaks you because you learned so much new, or it was so emotional for you that it just sort of rips you apart, and then but you feel like you got something out of it, so it's kind of like putting yourself back together and rising from the ashes. That might not be common for everybody. I don't know. I feel like I get that experience a lot. Maybe it's just because I have so much passion for literature. Y'all should have passion for things. Don't have passion?
Not for literature.
I mean, you can have passion for other things. Be like, man, I love science or math or accounting.
No.
Those are the three main ones: science, math, accounting. What?
I love swimming.
Passion for not having to do things. A lot of people have passions for different things. You know, like I have passion, like not me. People have like passion for I have animals. I love animals. A passion for animals, and like you just want to take care of all the animals. People have different passions. Y'all should find one. Find your thing. You need to. You got to find your thing. Where you feel like you're being consumed by hot fire when you're learning new stuff about it, and then at the point when I just can't take it anymore. And like you feel like completely ripped apart by the thing, and then you rise like a phoenix from the ashes with all the new knowledge you've got, ready to go be burned up again.
I think politics is your passion.
You have a shirt that says money on it.
I know, right?
Money on my mind. Money is my mind.
It's on. Yeah.
That's so weird. You're Mitchell Money. You're an accounting major, and you're wearing a shirt about money.
Wouldn't you want your accountant or maybe financial advisor if you named money?
I don't think that would be relevant. It's just a name. Logically, there's no relationship.
I know, but wouldn't it?
Wordsworth became a great poet.
Yeah.
Actually, honestly, I say that, and I am saying that there is actually a either psychological or sociological basis, and it's beyond just coincidental. It's beyond mistaking coincidence for causality. They've actually found a link between people who are in certain careers, or people have certain names, tend to gravitate toward the thing they have a name for. So it's actually very fitting, Mitchell, that you would go into a job that involves money, and it actually makes sense because that happens to people.
Example, my friend who works with me, Jefferson, he plays in a jazz band at Commerce,
Mm-hmm.
and his friend that was playing the saxophone, his name was like something sax. And I was like, that's weird.
You just gravitate toward it.
And his name is Sax. I was like, wow.
And my last name is Nichols, so I don't really care about money because it's a small denomination. If my name was Pennies, I wouldn't even come to work. I'd just be like, just sitting at home, like, yeah, I'll figure something out. What now?
Like that's a nickel.
Yeah.
But the penny, you'd be like, well, like one more day, a work of day is a penny a day. A penny a day for work.
Yeah, I'd be like, that's enough. I've got enough. I got me 1 penny. And Zona, of course, I don't know where you would gravitate toward. There's an original name that I have no idea.
That's only in Arabic, so.
Yeah, what is the origins of that? Does it have an origin, or is it? Are y'all just talking about that just now or something? Oh, okay.
Tell us.
It's in Arabic. It's Arabic, really?
No, it's Hebrew actually.
Hebrew. Oh, neat. That's kind of neat. Well, you don't have to tell me if you don't want to.
The Hebrew meaning is not bad.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not. That's Arabic.
No, it's
Did they name you knowing the
It's
meaning?
the Arabic meaning.
Well, the Hebrew meaning is not bad. What's the Hebrew meaning?
No, it's bad.
Well, what's the non-bad meaning? Is there one? Oh, okay. What's the Give me the non-bad one. The one you're not wanting to hear.
I don't remember it.
Awesome. That's great.
I don't remember it. I don't remember the bad one.
What does Alcorn mean?
Own it.
I don't know.
Okay, all right.
But in my
She's
middle name.
American. Yeah, you don't know.
I know, I know.
Is your middle name in the middle of the alphabet? Like M or
No,
L?
it's Diane, but
Oh, okay.
it goes with my first name.
Okay. I remember Diane's the Greek goddess. I don't know if it's the same relationship, but
No.
no, you don't have to. I don't want you to embarrass you. I didn't realize it was an embarrassing name. I just thought it was cool. I was trying not to embarrass. But yeah, it's they tend to find that people gravitate toward careers that and situations that are like their name. Like if your name is Johnny California, you're more than likely going to move. You're more likely than a normal person to move to California. Because you tend, like, if your name is Kansas and somebody names you Dallas, you're likely to move to Texas to be close to Dallas. It's really strange like that, but it's one of those things. So if you want your kid to move to a particular place someday,
Name them that.
name them that. Or, like, if you don't want your kid to leave home, name them Greenville. They'll just stay.
I hate this. Everyone's like, oh, like the town? I'm leaving away.
Now here's the sad one that we'll do next. When I have fears that I may cease to be. So this one's incredibly sad because I think he really did fear that he would cease to be, and soon. And I think it very much informs the theme of the poem. It's kind of like the opposite of. It's kind of like the opposite of contemplating suicide. He's contemplating involuntary death that's looming. So it's not like he's contemplating, oh, I may at some point want no longer to live. It's kind of the opposite. He's like, I want to live, but I can't stop contemplating death. So he's literally like trying to avoid the idea entirely. But, hold on, let's see. When I have fears that I may cease to be, before my pen has gleaned my teeming brain. And I love that metaphor. His pen has gleaned. Glean is to like kind of shave off bits of, or take bits off, or take, draw from. So gleaning his teeming brain. So he's talking about taking that off the brain or from the brain and into the pen. Like I see like the brain's thoughts just seeping into the pen and then going onto the page. It's like a cool visual. Before high-piled books in charactery, and it says here, down below, that characters printed letters of the alphabet, but I also thought that it could work on a double level, like when charactery, because he also wrote like Endymion, which had characters in it, so you could talk about both charactery, like the lettering, and the characters, So I think it works on that dual level. Before high-piled books in charactery. And he's saying, before they hold like rich garners the full ripened grain. So it's like he's got a garner, which is the thing that holds grain. It's almost like a silo, I guess, but it holds grain. So the garner holds grain. It says when he has fears that he'll cease to be alive anymore, before the books he's piled high are filled with his words, as a garner is filled with the grain from the harvest. So essentially like big empty books that have not been filled with the thoughts of his mind. It's a long, complicated metaphor. Symbol. When I behold upon the night's starred face huge cloudy symbols of a high romance. So he can see them there, he just hasn't written them yet. And think that I may never live to trace their shadows with the magic hand of chance. So he sees like the characters floating there in the heavens, and he's like, oh, I should write these. And he says like when he writes, he merely traces their shadow. That's really a cool idea. So he's like, even when he writes the best that he can, or maybe he's saying he won't even have the chance to trace their shadow because death is so close. And when I feel, fair creature of an hour, that I shall never look upon thee more, never have relish in the fairy power of unreflecting love. And this is what I've wondered about this. It sounds as though he's talking to a person, but I've always wondered, like, what person is he talking to? Because he's talked about his book and about his writing in a third-person sense. And he says, fair creature of an hour, that I shall never look upon thee, or never have relish in the fairy power of unreflecting love. Is he talking about us? Fair creature of an hour. It's like he's talking to me. And when I feel, fair creature of an hour, reader, that I shall never look upon thee more. But has he ever looked upon me at all? I mean, you could say like sometimes they have a look, meaning not taking in, but casting. So like kings would cast a glance in someone's direction. He'd be like, oh, I'm honored by his look. Like it was more about the giving than it was about the receiving of vision. So I don't know if he's saying, look upon thee more. I doubt he doesn't seem like the cocky type that would say, oh, I am like a king to you.
Maybe he's talking about the characters that he's like thinking of.
I don't know. Since he talked about the book so objectively, it seems odd that he would take a character and do the same thing. But it could very well be that he's talking directly to like his brother or like a relative. It wasn't somebody he fell in love with because that never happened. Can you imagine? Not even have a chance to fall in love before. Well. And then never have relish in the fairy power of unreflecting love. When it says unreflecting love, it sounds like love that goes one direction. Unreflecting, is that right? Like love that's not reflected back toward you. So one-way love. And he says unreflecting, but he doesn't say unrequited. So maybe he like shows his love toward us, but it's not reflected back to him so that he can see it, never have that power to see the power of his words reflected back at him, like he can see people's appreciation of that which he plans to write. That actually does make a lot of sense. So if he is, when he says, I look upon thee, like maybe he's casting his look at us. I've never actually taken this reading before. I've usually taken it as some real person, but I don't know, it sounds attractive thinking that it might be us that he's talking about here. So I'm going with this possible exploration. It very well could be a person. Then on the shore of the wide world I stand alone and think till love and fame to nothingness do sink. I really do think that there is, it could make sense if he's saying to look upon thee, to cast my look to thee. Because he often he removes words. If you notice that he leaves out words that aren't convenient for him at times. Like he'll leave out the word to or the word the, he'll just skip it. Because it doesn't work with the sound, so he just says, whatever, jump over that one. So maybe when he's saying never look upon thee, like maybe cast my look upon thee, or give my look to thee. The way in which I see the world, it really seems like more of a stretch the way I'm trying to explain it, but I don't know, I like that reading. Even if he didn't mean it. Am I allowed to do that? I feel like I'm learning about it in the idea, in the trying to think about it. But in the wide world I stand alone and think till love and fame to nothingness do sink. Because when I have fears that I may cease to be, he's thinking about the fact that he may one day not be here. And one day soon, I think. And he wonders, like, he sits on the shore of the wide world. So sitting on the shore is often like, a solitary thing. You sit on you're on a beach and there's nobody there at night, it's just you. And then the wide world is in front of him, I assume, meaning he's alone. He thinks until love and fame to nothingness sink. So the very idea of having love, the very idea of having fame as a result of having written, he sits and thinks so intensely about death and about his impending death that all the other thoughts are gone. Like I can imagine that being the case in somebody who like you find out you have cancer or something and you find out it's terminal and you've only got a short time. Like every other thought in your head's going to be hard to, it's going to be hard to like pursue any of the positive things that you want to pursue before, unless you're like, I will beat this, and then you beat it, and then like okay now. But I would think still even it's going to be very hard to forget the fact that you once had cancer and that very well could come back. All those kind of things. Like, I don't know. What'd y'all think about this? Y'all can have different thoughts. I just made up the one that I just had today. It was a new one. I've never actually had that set of thoughts before. Did you draw that as a paperclip? Is it a money symbol? Of course.
Of course.
It'd be funny if money is your name, but like all the symbols you had all over the place were like dolphins. Like wearing dolphin stuff all the time. What's up, dolphins? And they're like, why are you? I don't understand. And you're like, dolphin's my last name. It's like, no, it's not his money. It's like, oh my god, I've been wrong this whole time. I'm not fierce as I may cease to be. I mean, some of y'all wrote about it. Some of y'all must have liked it. I almost threw my computer and closed it. What do you guys think?
I thought he was saying before he died he wanted to do this and that. I didn't really think about him. He's knowing he was going to die soon, and he was thinking about all the time, so he's like trying to distract his mind, I guess. I didn't really think of it like
I think he wants to pursue a normal life.
Yeah.
So it's less of a distraction, so more as the distraction is the death. You can't stop thinking about it.
Yeah.
It's awful. There's got to be, it reminds me of they're really young, like the Make-A-Wish kids, but I can imagine if you were like around the ages of 18 to 26, you just sort of knew like it was coming, and so then it was awful, like knowing that that's coming. But yeah, distracting, definitely. You just want to live a normal life. You want to think about normal stuff, but you just keep getting drawn back to the mortality, the corporeal frame. Let's skip over to autumn, because I want to read to autumn. Get it out of the way, because we have time. It's really far away. It's actually 1923. Because I want to make sure next time we spend most of our time talking about La Belle Dame Sans Merci, Ode to a Nightingale, and Ode Narration to Urn, because those are the most important ones. And I've already talked about the least important ones for quite a bit. Or least important to me. Now to autumn it says, down here it has this note, which I've never really understood. Is it really like this? Or is it really necessary? 2 days after his ode was composed, Keats wrote to J.H. Reynolds, I never liked stubble fields so much as now. Aye, better than the chilly green of the spring, somehow a stubble plain looks warm in the same way that some pictures look warm. This struck me so much on my Sunday's walk that I composed upon it. For the author's revisions while composing, blah, blah, blah. So it almost sounds like he's talking, when I say stubble field, I don't even know what that means. It's like a hay field, like those hay bales?
Yeah.
Or like it's been cut, so it's got like that yellow look to it. It's, I guess.
Yeah.
Because they didn't really have like access to lots of mowers back then, so it'd be somebody going around either hacking or like cows eating, or goats.
Like after they harvested the wheat.
Oh, is that what it is? That's what a stubble field is?
That's what I thought it was.
Oh, I've never known. I've never harvested wheat.
When you can harvest wheat with a scythe, you don't have to have a mower.
Yeah, so I guess he's seen this, and it has that sort of fallish look to him, so he writes to autumn. Season of mists and mellow fruitfulness, close bosom friend of the maturing sun. So I actually kind of imagine like a sunset, even though it's maturing sun would be like, going into the colder months. Conspiring with him how to load and bless with fruit the vines that round the thatch eaves run. To bend with apples the mossed cottage trees, and fill all fruit with ripeness to the core. To swell the gourd and plump the hazel shells with a sweet kernel. To set budding more and still more later flowers for the bees. Until they think warm days will never cease, for summer has o'erbrimmed their clammy cells. I don't like this poem. It's just I feel like I'm looking at an autumn display at Hobby Lobby. Like I feel like that's what this is. Like I feel like I'm just getting like he's like, how many visual images of autumn can I fit into one stanza? That's kind of how it feels. Like it's like when somebody makes a recipe that has too many ingredients and you're just like, it's almost like a fruit cake or something. You're like, oh gosh, there's too much going on here. And it's a cake and it's heavy and it's got fruit in it, also nuts. Like what are you trying to do? Like I don't know, just is that celery? Like what is going on? What?
I guess you don't like fruitcake. Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of fruitcake. It's got celery in it too, and like weird little things. Like I just don't get it.
I don't like carrot cake. No.
Carrot cake's delicious.
I don't like that.
Walmart sells the best carrot cake I've ever had in my life. It's weird, but Walmart's carrot cake you just buy like in the deli. Mm-hmm. It's like white with like some dusting of like orange stuff, and then you see like a little picture like a carrot that they've frosted on the top, and I'm just like, what is this? I won't like this. And my wife bought it for something and then ended up getting it for us.
Hey, I don't know. Maybe some carrot cake is good, but
you should have it. It's really good. It's like cream cheese icing too. So
that's good. Okay, I like that.
Do you like pumpkin, like pie or something like that?
I like
I don't either.
I'm not a huge pumpkin fan.
If you get pumpkin, nothing but bun cake, that's good stuff.
But that's just because I say those nothing but
yes.
bun. Is that the stores?
Yeah, in Rockport.
That is so good.
Nothing bunt cake. that's clever name.
Nothing but bun.
No, that's not how it goes. So stanza 2. Who hath not seen thee oft amid thy store? Sometimes whoever seeks abroad may find thee sitting careless on a granary floor, thy hair soft lifted by the winnowing wind, or on a half-reaped furrow sound asleep, drowse with the fume of poppies, while thy hook spares the next swath all its twined flowers. And sometimes like a gleaner thou dost keep steady thy laden head across a brook, or by a cider press with patient look thou watchest the latest oozings hours by hours. So it's saying like, autumn, you are here and there, and on this other thing that's very autumn-like. I just don't know. I don't like it that much. Just like one big giant image with no real meaning to me. Where are the songs of spring? Aye, where are they? Think not of them. Thou hast thy music too. While barred clouds bloom the soft dying day and touch the stubble plains with rosy hue, then in a wailful choir the small gnats mourn among the river sallows, borne aloft or sinking as the light wind lives or dies, and full-grown lambs loud bleat from hilly bourne, hedge crickets sing, and now with treble soft the redbreast whistles from a garden croft, and gathering swallows twitter in the skies. It's just stuff. It's just a bunch of stuff. It's like a big laundry list of stuff. Like, I don't know. Does anybody find anything else great in here? Like, I mean, I don't figure anything I'm supposed to get out of it other than, hey, look. It's like a painting with words.
Yeah.
But I don't really feel like it's like a Thomas Kincaid painting with words to me. Like, it's not like, I don't feel like it's like I'm like reading like a Picasso where I'm like, okay, I'm supposed to consider who, like, what the relationship is of this part that's been distorted to these other parts, or like a Van Gogh or like a Monet where I'm like, okay, what is this expression trying to tell me about the way that people see the world, and I can still tell what this is. And I feel like I'm just like somebody, it's like paint by numbers. You know, it's like going to Painting with a Twist, and they gave you autumn, and you come out with your autumn painting, and you're like, oh yes, this has all the things. It's like a Where's Waldo book of autumn, but there's no Waldo. It's just autumn. Like, there's just lots of little things there. Now, if you like the autumn, I'm not trying to disparage that. I don't think it's a problem. It's just I don't find much there. Like, I just don't find anything else supposed to get out of it. It's just a painting. It's wallpaper.
He just expressed his love for autumn as a word in words, like what he likes about autumn.
Maybe it was autumn and he was just trying to get his mind off of it. And it's just like everything.
Maybe. I mean, he was much closer. Well, I mean, he's not that much closer.
Yeah.
He's pretty close, though.
He was trying to spill his mind onto the page.
I don't know.
To distract him.
Maybe he was. I don't know. I think we've covered about all I want to cover today. I think we're good.
What? What time is it?
I don't know. Let's not even look at the clock.
His last poem?
Huh?
Was autumn his last poem?
It's the last poem published here, but I mean, he had some letters as well. I don't know if there's more beyond that. It's the last one we read. I don't know if chronologically it is the last one he wrote.
If that was his last